recording, or I'm not sure if it is live?
Oh, it's recording.
It's recording, so hello to the folks who will be watching this at some later date. I really enjoy actually talking about this subject because just because I found it so incredibly helpful to me. So it's not that I intend on getting some kind of doctorate in my life at some point on reading. That's not like that. It's more of when I discovered how to read text, and I don't mean how to read as in, if you're here, you're obviously literate, okay? So you know how to read. But it wasn't until way late in the game. Honestly, it wasn't until I was in graduate program that I actually learned how to read a text. And when I discovered it, it totally changed my life. I should have brought, I wish I had thought of it beforehand, I just thought of it right now, but I should have brought with me some of the textbooks that I had from my early days in college so that I can show you, because I thought I was doing a really good job by annotating, by going in and making notes and highlighting stuff. But as I look back at them now, I realize that probably one or two things tended to happen. Sometimes I would highlight things that I realized, well, that's an interesting factoid, but that doesn't, that could have been in this paragraph or not, and it wouldn't have made any difference to the point. I had missed the point, but I sure fixated on some interesting little fact. Or what was more likely to happen was I would look through it and I would say, nearly everything is highlighted, so how do I know what? When you end and you have of an entire page, when you have 3 lines that are not highlighted, that's not going to help you when you go back to study it. So what would happen when I would read a book before I learned how to actually read a book? What would happen is I would just do like maybe what you do. I would take it and I would skip the preface or the foreword, skip that. It's not important. Doesn't have anything to do with this. I want to get to the stuff. I would skip that, and then I would skip the table of contents because I know that I'm starting with chapter 1. I don't need, and I would just go straight to chapter 1, and I would just have my pen in hand, and I would just start reading. And I was just like, I would just be plowing through it. That wasn't the most effective method. And it turned out in life, it just wasn't as good as I would have hoped things had gone. And part of the reason is because I was attacking textbooks in a way that I wasn't wired to process information. Now, if you want to read a novel, you open up chapter 1 and you just start and you let the story unfold and you enjoy the story. But that is a different experience from reading something to learn it, to be able to organize and categorize the information. It's an entirely different experience. Okay? How many of you have, you've had a room that you've allowed to become cluttered and out of control and really needed to clean up, and you ignored it for a long time? Okay? Yeah? And so when you decide you're going to clean it, you walk into the room. How effective is it to just, okay, I'm going to clean up, and you walk in, you start putting this here and then there. Okay, it doesn't really usually work very well because if you do that, you've entered in without any kind of plan. And you might move stuff around, but you haven't put anywhere in its right place. You haven't organized it. You haven't cleaned it up. Some of us attack our textbooks in that same way. It's like we walk into a cluttered room and we just start moving around. We just start pushing through it. And the result is that you're unable to organize what you're getting. You're unable to categorize what you're getting. And when you finish, you have this feeling. All right, good. I got those 20 pages read. I have no idea what it was about. Yeah. And then you just feel defeated because you feel like I just spent valuable time knocking off an assignment and I don't feel like I retained anything. Well, what I want to do today is I want to help you get around that and not do that anymore because There are several different ways of going about this. I've chosen one method to show you today. I do want to write this down. I want to give you another reference to go to. You may not be able to read it during this semester, but I challenge you, I strongly encourage you to acquire it now, put it on your to-do list, and when between semester breaks, or if maybe you have space in the semester, read it. And that is How to Read a Book. Seriously, it's a book called How to Read a Book. How to Read a Book by Mortimer, great name, you're gonna love this. Mortimer, serious, that's his real name. Mortimer J. Adler. Mortimer J. Adler. It will change your reading life. Adler talks about, he will go more in depth from what I'm going to show you today, and it really, I haven't done it yet, but I've thought about, man, this should be standard required reading of every college student. So I haven't brought that up yet, but the thought is coming. Mortimer J. Adler, How to Read a Book. I wish I had read it when I was a college freshman. I didn't read it until after seminary. And I wonder what a difference it would make. So I strongly encourage you to pick that book up and read it. But today what I'm going to talk about is a strategy that is similar to some of what he does, but we're going to condense it. It's a little more condensed, it's a little more straightforward. It's called the SQ3R, which you should have that handout in front of you. The SQ3R. The idea of this strategy is that it helps you to understand and to organize the information that you are getting when you read. Think about, not do you ever, but I want to think about what you usually do. When you decide to go see a movie, how many of you want to know what the movie is about before you see it? Not that you've never done that, but just typically, you want to know. You don't want to know spoilers, but you want to know what it's about, right? You think that might be a good idea with books? You want to know what the movie is about before you see it because you want to know how to engage. You want to know, is this sci-fi? Do I need to expect people flying through space? Is it magic? Is this Harry Potter and wand stuff? Is this a drama? Should I bring some tissues with me? Is this action-packed? What is this? You want to know what it's about so that when you go in, your mind is engaged, focused, and is prepared to receive the movie and to organize the movie. You know where to place it. Same thing you need to do when you read a textbook is before you crack that thing open and start reading, figure out what it's about. And there's two really good strategies for doing that. One is you can read the back of the book. Not open it up and read the end of the book. Read the back of the book. Now, typically, the back of the book is written so that they want you to buy it, but it also usually gives you what's called a blurb. It gives you a paragraph that tells you what the book is about. So I have here, this is the textbook that my PCM students recognize this, the Holiness Pentecostal Tradition. If I pick that up, first, obviously, the title is a clue, but sometimes titles are cute and they don't tell you, right? So, but then I turn around, so I go to the back, and I see, okay, first of all, apparently it was a big deal. That's the first paragraph is saying everybody thought it was a big deal. Then the second paragraph tells me what the book is about. Simon brings together the stories of the many movements usually labeled holiness, Pentecostal, or charismatic, and shows that there is an identifiable second blessing tradition in Christianity that began with the Catholic and Anglican mystics that was crystallized in the teaching of John Wesley and further peppered, blah, 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 blah. The point is, when you read the back of the book, when you read that back cover, you've just been given the 30,000-foot view. It's like I told some students the other day, I said it's like when you type in the address on your GPS and you say, give me the directions, And the first thing it shows you is the picture of the map, right? With the route. Go up here and that way. You've been given the overview. You don't have the details yet. You don't know how the turns exactly are going to take place or when. But you have this picture that now your mind is oriented. Like, okay, I see I have to go north. Right? So the first thing is read the back of the book. I'm going to tell you the second technique in just a moment after I tell you this. So then once you've read the back of the book, open the thing up and go to, actually, the table of contents. The table of contents is not there to tell you how to get back to where you were reading. That's what bookmarks are for. Bookmarks tell you where to pick up where you left off. That's not what the table of contents is about. The table of contents is there to show you how the book is organized. So that as you're processing through it, you realize, okay, it's like going in to clean up the room. It's right. Clothes go in that closet. Okay? Garbage goes in this waste can basket over here. It is the map. The table of contents is the map. So you can see how this thing works and how it is organized. And so as I read this, I can look and I can see, okay, chapter 1, okay, I've got a preface. Then chapter 1 is the double cure, 1766 to 1866. I don't know what that's about, but okay. Echoes from the Forest Temple, the National Holiness Association, okay. The Fire Baptized Way, the Churches of God, the American Jerusalem, Azusa Street. Okay, I know a little bit about that. Yeah, I know, I've heard of that, and they've said that this class is going to be about that. If this is a history book, I can conclude that this is going to be background stuff that leads me to Azusa. So I'm going to guess, I might be wrong, but I'm going to guess chapters 1 through 4 are the story leading to Azusa. Now, I might read it and find out I'm wrong, but that's going to be my guess. All right? Pentecost comes south. Oh, okay. So this is after Azusa. He's going to focus on the south. Missionaries of the one-way ticket. These are post-Azusa missionaries. Kind of obvious, right? Criticism and controversy. African-American Pentecostals. The Pentecostals in society. The Neo-Pentecostal movement. Those start to get more obvious than the early ones. The Catholic Charismatic Renewal. The Charismatic Explosion. And Centennial Reflections. Oh, he's going to bring me right. I've got a map now. This is actually going to be, this is in chronological order. He's going to talk about Pentecostalism, and he's going to take me from the behind-the-scenes roots. He's going to hit Azusa, and then he's going to bring me all the way up to now. And it looks like, since he's going to talk about Catholics and Charismatics, he's not only talking about Pentecostals, he's going to talk about some other stuff. So he must associate all these things in a big pot. Okay? I now know what the book is about, and I know how it was organized. When you start to read now, you're going in, and your mind is geared and tooled. You've got a framework, all right? We're still not done with step 1, which is S. And trust me, the good news is it's a lot faster to get through step 1 than it is to explain. Because, so step 1, S. Then you go to, do read the preface, because the preface usually tells you more about what the book is about. Gives you more of the picture. So then you go to chapter 1. And you do, we're continuing the survey or the stand part of SQ3R. You go through chapter 1 and you look at the title of the chapter again, and then you just start scanning that thing and let your eyes, ignore my highlights right now, pretend this was a fresh book. Let your eyes just move through it. Okay? Don't worry about reading it. Let your eyes move through it. Let words and sentences pop out at you. Pay special attention to the section headings. Okay? Wesleyan mystical tradition. Wesley's conversion. I can tell what he's going to be talking about, right? This chapter is about Wesley. Wesleyan Christian perfection. Pretty clear, right? The spread of American Methodism. Camp meeting at Cane Ridge. Charles Finney, Oberlin. You get some more names. Okay, now he moves into names that come after Wesley. Pre-Civil War. Oh, he's going to end before the American Civil War. As you do that, as you pay special attention to those section headers, just the same way you would the table of contents. Now sometimes you get lucky and you get these books that have expanded tables of contents. You may have seen some of those. They've got the chapter title and then underneath all the section headings. That's really nice when you see that, because it's just a nice way of organizing them, looking at an outline. It's really what you're doing. When you're looking at the table of contents and you're looking at the section headers, you're looking at the outline of the book before you read the contents. And just how you write your outline before you write, you should view the outline before you read, because it helps organize what you're working with. As you go through, now if your book has charts and stuff, Lana, you're going to have tons of charts and tables because the MFT, they're just loaded with it, right? As you're scanning it, look at those charts. You may not understand them, but every time you're doing that, you're prepping your mind. It's like watering, it's like plowing, you're getting ready, okay? If you see any words that pop out at you that you're, what in the world is that about? Just circle it. Don't try to figure it out, just circle it and keep moving. When you finish that, you finished the S step. You finished the scan, the survey. Result is you've got a map, right? Then you move on to Q, which is the questions. And this should only take you 30 seconds to a minute. So we're not talking about making every day. Scanning, take you a minute or two, depending on the length of the chapter. It might take you longer, but we're talking minutes, all right? Then you go through the Q part, the questions. What I recommend is that you run through it. You can write these down if you want, or you can just kind of make these mental notes in your head. Look at the section headers and turn it into a question. What is Wesley and the mystical tradition? Well, you want to turn that into a question. I would recommend a good question would be, what is the relationship between Wesley and the mystical tradition? Okay, what's the usually when they have something and something, it's usually a relationship question. It usually means that the author is trying to show you the relationship between two things. So a good question is, what's the relationship between that? You may want to make a note of that or just make it mentally. So then when you're reading the book, when you're reading that section, attempt to answer the question. Keep that question in front of you the whole time. How are Wesley and the mystical tradition related? How are they connected? If that is your aim, you will very quickly find out the author's point. Because what he's going to tell you is that the mystical tradition with the early church fathers and with the Anglican Catholic mystic writers, Wesley drank from those and they influenced his spirituality and his theology, which led him to create his other things. You're going to come to that conclusion if you try to answer that question. And then when you finished it, and if you feel like, okay, I can't just dash down a quick little sentence. Okay? That's what this is about. This is where, then because now you're reading, you make your question on each section header. Again, this is quick stuff. You shouldn't be spending, this should not take you 15 minutes. And this should take you a minute or two. Because you're just going quick through it. You're going to say, okay, John Humphrey Noyes at Oneida. No idea who that is. Don't even know where Oneida is. You circle that. And a good question would be, who is he and why is he in here? I mean, if that's, good, straightforward. And so when you're reading, you're trying to find the answer. Just like you used to do in, lower school when they would give you not the questions of interpretation like essay stuff, but they would give you, questions, and you're supposed to find these questions, the answers to these questions in the book. You remember doing that in school? And most of us didn't read the book. We'd say, okay, question, and we would skim through until we found the answer, fill it in, and then skip to the next. Okay, you're doing a little bit of that, all right? You are making a question out of the header, and you're saying, now I'm going to find the answer. And usually, that's going to be more than what you had to do in middle school, but the same idea applies. Okay? And when you're done, then you're able to say, that's what that section was about. I now remember. You don't have to remember everything anyway, by the way. Because now as you're reading, only things that are important. If it's something cute, find a different way to mark it. All right? I will do that sometimes. Sometimes I'll put a little check mark in the margin, or I'll put like a Q, which means quote, which means look at this again, because this is a quote that's worth using. This is gold here. Even though it's maybe it's not the main point, but it's a golden quote. I'll put that so I don't distract myself. I only underline, I only highlight things that are main points. Things that answer the question that I've created out of the section header. Understand? I'm looking for the answers, and I highlight or underline only things that answer that. Some pages you'll have more. Some pages like this, there's one mark. Okay. If you color your books, I strongly recommend that you break the habit by just saying, okay, I'm going to force myself to highlight part of one sentence in each paragraph. That will break the habit. Because then you're going to have to be very judicious about when you get to spend your highlighting. And you will underline only those things that answer the questions you bring into it. Okay? So that's S for scan or survey. Q, you've made questions out of the section headings. 3 is you've read it. Okay? And you don't have to read it like this. Here's a little tip. You don't have to read your assignments like you read the Bible. Okay? Now, I think this might be one of the things that get us, because we read the Bible devotionally, and some of us practice some of those reading methods where you read it slow and you savor every word and you think about it and you ponder it. That's good for formative devotional Bible reading. Keep doing it. That's a terrible idea when it comes to your textbooks. Because you have to read 100 pages in a week and you will never make it. All right? Just get the important stuff. You know? And if the book is so well written and it's so beautiful and it's so amazing that you just want to savor every word, read it when you're out of school. Reread it. Until then, get the main points and move on. Okay? And when you feel like you've grasped it, you don't have to savor every example. Sometimes authors will give you 3 different kinds of examples to make the point, because they're good teachers and they realize that you get things different ways. Once you've mastered it, you can glance at I give you permission. Once you've mastered it, you can glance at the examples and moved on. When you feel like I really got the concept, 2 apples and 2 apples equals 4 apples. I don't need to read about 2 and 2 bananas. I don't need to read about 2 and 2 cars, 2 and 2 houses. Okay? Once I got it, you can just kind of glance at those things and move on. Okay? Answer the question and move on. That's going to help you. Right? So, scan, question, read, review. Now you're going to go back and you're going to look at the things that you've marked and the questions that you've answered. Right? And you're not going to reread the whole thing. Okay? You're going to just go back and you're going to touch on those things. I love when I found out this, the highlighting became so helpful, because then when I was going to go back and prep for something, I just went to my highlighting. When I've done work, when I've done some research, and I didn't make all the notes, I need to go back to this. I just have to look at what I marked, because then I just glance at what I marked, bam, bam, bam. I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember. I only got the important stuff. Right? Now every writer thinks that every word is important. I'm telling you the secret. I'm a writer. Every word is not important. Right? So. Then it's what you call recite, which is then when you want to be able to make yourself, without prompting, answer the questions you created in the textbook. Okay? You know you have got the chapter when you can look at the headings and you know what those questions are, and you can give a quick 1-sentence answer. Now, if you have tests that ask details, that's a little bit of a different story. But if you're talking about comprehending and getting a hold of that information and marshaling it for your uses, when you can go through and recite, not all the details, not all the dates, not all the places, not all the little examples, but when you can recite, that's about that, and the point is this. The point is, some psychological theory, okay? And the main thing about this, behavioral therapy is, and you can get that, then you're beginning to understand that book. Then you got it. Then you're ready to conquer. Then you can say what the book is about. Then you can actually write about it. It sounds like that when you utilize the SQ3R method, it sounds like, oh my goodness, this is going to make my reading longer.
That's what I was thinking.
It doesn't. And you know why it doesn't? Because when you dive right into the text and try to plow through, your brain is trying to organize at the same time that it's sinking to understand. You're trying to organize, how does this play into this? Where is he going? What is the point? But when you do the flyby and the questions, and then when you read, you actually enable yourself to read faster, because your brain is not trying to organize and figure out where it's going at the same time as trying to understand the information coming at it. You already know where it's going, and you kind of know where to put it. So you're able to, instead of going this here, you're able to go this there, this there, this there, and you actually find yourself going faster. So what the reason it makes it shorter and more effective is because you're being strategic about it. You're going with a plan, and you're doing one thing when you read instead of two or three things.
So are the question and reading, do you do those concurrently, or do you survey the entire chapter, go back and make your questions, and then go back and read?
I would recommend when you first start doing it sequentially.
Okay.
Eventually what will happen is you'll get to the point where you can, just as practice, when as you survey, you'll be able to start firing out those questions. You got to train yourself. But so that you don't get bogged down with the question, because the same thing can happen with questions as can happen with reading. When you're first starting, you can get yourself bogged and kind of paralyze yourself with anxiety because you don't know where this is going. I don't know where he's taking me. So when you're first starting this out, I really recommend just do it sequentially. Do your scanning or survey, then do your questions, then you read. But once you start to master that, you'll be able to scan. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't, but you'll be able to scan and question at the same time. And let me show you. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with this kind of academic spinning technique, is it then acceptable to say to those professors who ask, did you read all of the text, that we did not read every single word, obviously, because this type of reading will allow for that, but that's still a truthful statement?
Good question.
Yeah.
I would say, the people I know, I would say, the answer is yes. Basically, because what they're asking is, they're asking, did you read this in its entirety? I.e., did you go through it and comprehend it? Or and by entirety, we're typically saying, you read chapter 1 doesn't mean you read 3/4 of chapter 1. Did you read all of chapter? Did you read start to finish or not? I would feel comfortable in using this method and saying yes, because I've accomplished the objective. And the objective was not to savor every word. The objective was to comprehend the material and be able to evaluate it and use it in synthesis at a later point. That was the objective. So I would say yes. I would say yeah. More questions? I'm looking something up that I want to show you, so feel free to ask more questions.
So do you prefer just like one question per second, just one main question?
you may end up, you may have more, but I would just stick with one, unless you just have two burning questions, and that would be okay. But kind of a good rule of thumb is just you want to minimize, right? And another reason why you want to, as much as possible, stick with one is because, there it is, sorry, is because you don't want to, the purpose of the minimizing and the purpose of narrowing is to get the point, is to understand what the author is trying to argue, right? And so the more you discipline yourself to focus like that, it will help you to find out what is the thesis, what is the argument here. And I do this, I learned this years ago, and I'm telling you, I do this every day. I mean, this is how I read now, unless I'm reading for sheer pleasure. Even though even when I am reading for sheer pleasure, I'll still look through. I may not skim, I slow down and go at a leisurely pace, but I'll still look through, except for novels, that's a totally different story, but I'll still look through the headings, because I still like to be oriented. I still like to know where this is going. It's a human trait.
Is there a way to apply this to certain methods of studying Scripture?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. For example, when we say, you may have an assignment sometimes that says, I want you to read the entire book of Romans or the entire book of John in one sitting. That would be a really good example of, that would be a good example of that. I want to show you, because the last thing I'll show you, and keep coming with your questions, it's totally fine, is what happens when you get the really super complicated book. This is, God bless you if you ever have to read, graduate students primarily, God bless you if you ever have to read Spirit Word Community by Amos Yong. Certainly among one of the most difficult books I've ever read. Amos, I know Amos, I don't know well, but I know him. Really good man, and I've read, most of his books, and most of them like that, but this particular one, it was a doozy. It gets into a lot of metaphysics and, it's a theology of interpretation and understanding the world and how that works with the pneumatic imagination. Yeah. And I can remember at times reading a paragraph and using this method even still. I mean, using all my resources, reading a paragraph and saying, I have no idea what this sentence even means, And you feel bad when you have to Google a word or Google a name to say, who is C.S. Pierce? Who is Whitehead? What in the world is this? And what I ended up having to do was, I rarely have I done this, but I actually I made a diagram of this book. So this is for, you usually won't have to do this, but this is for that one that's really gotcha. Okay, I was like, I have got to do something with this text because he's killing me here. And so I made a diagram using the way he organized the book. Because I said, I need to be able to look at this and be able to organize it. That's what I need to do. And so his book was broken up into 3 parts, parts 1, 2, and 3. Each part had 3 chapters. That last one, it wasn't the number was missing, but it was chapter 9. So 3 parts, each part had 3 chapters. And then what I would do is I would organize them into columns, and then these are all the section headings of that text. Okay? And I used coloring so that I wouldn't confuse it. Yeah, it was a killer, I'm telling you. Disengaging the other, an account of epistemic fallibilism. Don't you just want to read that? That doesn't make you excited? Yeah. The activity of interpretation. Tell us as subject and object. All right. Okay, so I organized it like this. Again, these are once I did that, this was after I had read the text, and I was studying it, because I was having to write some exams on, or answers, and I just was, because I'm using it in some written work, and so I said, so I organized it like this. And once I did that, I still don't profess to understand everything in Amos's book. I'm not sure Amos understood Amos' book, but I still don't profess to understand everything. But once I did this, I started to see what he was doing. Because I started to see how this blue column connects to this column, which connects to this column, and this one connects to this one, which connects to this one. And see, for example, here you can see this in the theme, for example. Spirit and word, he's going to talk about word in here. Here he's talking about signs, which in his stuff has to do with words. And here he's talking about the hermeneutics and understanding the word. And then, here, metaphysical stuff. So anyway, I was able to begin to see how these things connected and related. Now, an advantage was, one of the reasons I did this was his own preface. So here, preface or introduction, I don't remember what it's called, but here's another reason. He explains what his method is. And so he says it's going to be something like this. So I thought, if that's what he's saying, and if I can look at it in such a way, it might help me understand more. So I organized it. And I saw, oh, sure enough, what he claimed he was doing, he is doing. And it's a spiraling, it's really what he does. I found what I realized is it's like a corkscrew. So his argument goes through this round, and then this round, and this round. And I realized that's what he's doing. I was able to understand more. I understand everything. I was able to understand more. Just putting it in a visual so that I could stand back and look at that thing made it more manageable. And then when I was reading through, if I was like, okay, so how does this fit into everything? Okay, that's where that point that he's making goes here. I can see how it fits in his whole argument. You won't usually have to do that, but you may. And my point of showing that to you is just, if you are getting a book that's just kicking your tail, find a way to lay that thing out so that it's not killing you. Find a way to feel like you've got some control over that. Again, you don't have to do it every time, but do something like that. Organize it like this. Do something to put that thing, to get some distance, step back and be able to look at it. Questions?
This is gold.
Good. I hope it's helpful. I really do. It's like I said, when I learned it, I wish somebody had told me so long ago. It changed my life. So, thanks. I've enjoyed it. I'm glad to share a tip.